Good morning, folks. It's 9:32. Pardon me, I'm running a little bit late. That clock's slow. I'll point out to the city. Take care of that, Tiffany. You in charge of clocks? Charge of clocks. Duly noted, okay. Good morning, welcome. First order of business is our approval of the minutes for the February 20th and May 15th meetings.
I move we approve the minutes of the May 15th meeting.
How about, we have to do them separately?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, no, we can do it
No,
together.
we can do them together. So February 20th and May 15th meeting.
I do that.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Have a second?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, we don't have the May 15th minutes. So
Well,
we can approve the February 20th minutes.
scratch that off the agenda.
We do our best to get the agenda out ahead of time, and so we're trying really hard to get minutes in time to get them to you all, but that's why the minutes aren't, we didn't get the minutes to put with the agenda, so.
Probably correct that motion to February 20th. All right, I have a motion. Still have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're rolling right along. The main reason we're here, we have a certificate of appropriateness for 131 North 4th Street. I think we have a couple of gentlemen here ready to brief us on what's happening. Brian, if you folks would step to the mic and introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I'm Morgan Bird, Brian Reynolds, Gypsy Rum Brewery. We're here to, I guess, I don't know what you all want us to tell you to do. Add a deck to the back of our building. Also replace the existing window with a door leading out onto the deck. And that deck will eventually lead into a courtyard down below.
Y'all look better than what it looked.
I think so, yeah. I think we've made, I don't know if you all have paid much attention to the front of the building, but I feel like what we've done has greatly improved the
Looking good.
appearance. Yeah.
Looking very good.
And
Thank
we
you.
plan to do the same to the back, same material, same type of deck, metal, the powder coated black or whatever.
What's gonna happen to the air conditioning unit there?
It's just gonna go, the deck is gonna be over top of that.
Okay,
It's gonna, where the color changes,
yep.
that's where the deck is gonna go.
So the floor of the deck is basically at the bottom of what is yellow, probably in your design.
Right.
Before it changes from yellow to brick.
Correct.
And what kind of door are you putting in?
Glass door, just a commercial glass door.
There's not what's the regulations on the setback for a deck? Is there one? I don't know. Mr. P and D man, back there in the front.
Steve?
There should be zero setback like everything else, I would think.
I don't understand your question. What's a setback?
Well, there used to be an ordinance where there's zero setback in the downtown area. In other words, you build a building, you can build it right next to another building, and there's no.
How close to the property line?
There's no setback
Yeah.
required, so. I don't want us to prove you, then come along and then the planning and zoning come back and say there's a zero setback.
Deck's gonna go.
So if it's a residential use, there's more traditional setbacks. If it's non-residential, there's zero side setbacks, but there's a 10-foot rear setback.
So it wouldn't affect them.
So it's 10-foot rear, zero sides, and then the front's incidental, so we're not talking about front, but it'd be a zero
So they
side.
would have a zero setback.
Zero
Is that what I
side
hear?
setback, 10-foot rear, and if it's residential, it's totally different.
And just because this gets stuck in my mind occasionally, and I may be totally wrong, this is not visible from the street, correct?
Correct.
It's not visible from 4th Street. I assume you can see it from, what is that?
And you think this is gonna
Broadway?
enhance your?
Is this even under our,
It's gonna do a couple of things. It's gonna enhance our business. It's gonna create
we
a
can
secondary
approve it, but
fire
really-
exit, so the building is actually safer than it currently is. Because now you have two legitimate fire-safe
bring it up.
exits, for people to exit the building in the case of a fire.
This allows us to go from 49 people to 99 people as well.
Chairman,
inside.
from what I've heard, I want to make a motion to approve your request.
I second that.
nope. I have a-
Well, you need, however you do your motion, we're skipping in our meetings, we're skipping the staff report, the findings of fact that are part of this hearing. So you need to address that in your motion and also in your discussion.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The staff report that Joni has done, you need to address that in either the motion or your discussion, because she has done the investigation, she's went out and she's given you her thoughts on this. So we need to address that before you make a motion.
All right, so I'll just say that, and thank you for all your research. You're the reason this is so easy these days. So it is a contributing structure to the downtown district. She covers a description, and the applicable guidelines are 6.4.1, additions to existing commercial buildings. And that covers the right-of-way, protects the primary building, is it compatible with the materials and the other things used, and the staff recommendation is to approve as per guidelines. This design is reversible, the design is simple, does not detract from or obstruct the building's structural elements, the design is compatible with mass and scale of the building, and it's clearly an addition to the structure and does not replicate any historic features. And so that's just for the deck. In regards to the window, the staff, and we have to do guidelines 4.2.1, .2, and .4, and that is regards to windows, masonry, and the exposed wall surfaces. So minimize the appearance of new door openings would be key. And that is secondary elevations or rear elevations. Cutting new window openings in the facade is not acceptable, not appropriate, and that doesn't do any of this. And so, staff recommendation is, although this is not the primary facade, the window appears to be original to the structure and maintains the brick lintel and stone sill. Enlarging this opening into a door would destroy the original building materials and is not reversible. Staff recommendation would be to retain historic window and move door into the wooden frame section on the L. This would retain the original masonry building material and opening. The door material and design is not indicated on the application, but you told us what it was. So, in regards to the door, can you move it back to the,
We're going to exhaust every option, all options that we have to keep the door where it is.
How would that affect the safety? Consider that.
The safety, if you go inside the building, where we're proposing to put the door is in what we call the game room. The bank of windows back in the back is what we call the lounge. If we put the door back there, it'll just kind of ruin the,
It'll change the whole
Yeah.
environment that we have begun for.
Is there a rear exit to the building at
just gonna ask
present?
that.
there's a small rear exit to the left on the other side of the building that goes into that alley.
So as a safety factor, a fire marshal would ask, do you really need a door here?
We don't really need a door here, but by adding a door here, it allows us to have 99 people in the building as opposed to 41 people.
I would like to say that I read the report, and since the proposed window removal is not on the facade, and what they're going to do, while it won't be the original lintel, the structure of the building, I assume this will be a well-constructed door, would not be a detriment to the integrity of the structure. So since it isn't really going to show from a main thoroughfare, I think it should be approved.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, again, our intention is to, you know, okay.
We're working with you, just hang in there, fellas, hang in there. We're dotting all the i's,
So
crossing all the t's.
What's the motion? Restate the motion, what was the motion?
I should
Well, we
be able to
interrupted you,
take
so we probably
Well,
should be.
and again,
Julie.
we're encumbered by what our guidelines are. And so you all will need to address why you are not agreeing with the guidelines. And I think probably what Dana has said addresses that fairly well.
It's
Just
not in the
make
facade,
sure-
it's not visible from the
Right.
street.
Right,
There's
right.
some safety, it enhances safety for the building.
All of those things I would make sure that you address.
Just put that in the motion.
I'm writing this as.
Didn't you make the motion?
Yeah, I did.
We interrupted him.
So why don't you,
I'll make an amendment to the motion, to add that to the motion.
Our attorney's sitting there grinning at us. He's like probably dying 1,000 deaths going.
and I'll second the restated motion. I'll second that.
Oh, hold on a second. He's
Yeah, he
thinking.
pulled the microphone closer.
Well, I was just going to state a motion for you to say so moved, if that would be appropriate.
So move.
I think the motion would be to approve the construction, or the certificate of appropriateness for the construction of the deck along the side of the rear addition, as it is in conformance with guideline 6.4.1, as dictated on the staff report, and then to approve the certificate of appropriateness regarding the existing rear window with a door, despite the guidelines referenced in section 3.4 due to the enhanced security features and lack of intrusion to the stability of the architectural integrity.
Sounds great.
Okay. Now we have a motion. Do I have a second?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I knew you were thinking that, Mayor.
We have a second. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Gentlemen, thank you.
Actually, I have one other question that has nothing to do with this. The underneath, the store, they're moving next door, so you have this big space.
Yes,
You gonna take advantage of it?
eventually, yes.
Cool.
This is phase 2, that's phase 14 or so.
Got it.
Yeah, we'll get there, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being downtown, adding to the downtown environment.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thanks
guys.
for
Thanks
helping
working.
and allowing us to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Good.
Don't you love it when it works? Yes. All right, item number 4, City of Danville Architectural Review Bylaw change. Staff.
We had brought this up before. I'm not sure you were here, Mr. Chairman, but we need to make sure that board members meet the requirements of the ordinance, and our current bylaws do not address that, so we need to make changes to the bylaws, and if you approve those, then we will also make a change to our Architectural Heritage Board ordinance. It is imperative that members be here if at all possible, because you miss a lot when you're not here, but it's also imperative that people get their training that's required by ordinance. We also have to turn that in on our staff report, on our annual report to the Kentucky Heritage Council, which can eventually have an impact on our certified local government status. So we brought this to you for discussion to see if you're okay with changing the bylaws so that we could enforce this if need be. Hopefully it won't be needed, but we do need something that helps us. Because the
What if we don't-
staff, we're kind of tied. Our hands are kind of tied at this point. And
What if, Mr. City Attorney, what if we don't change the bylaws and leave them like they are? Does that put us in jeopardy or what?
Well,
Since
first
we're-
point,
since
as a
we're
matter of note,
much-
anything that's underlined is an addition, just for those that may not be familiar, to the bylaws and the ordinance, okay? So if something's underlined, that's new language that does not currently exist. You're obviously not required to make the changes that are before you, because they weren't in the original ordinance. However, I think as staff has indicated in its annual review by the Heritage Council of the city's certified local government status, these matters are considered and potentially could be a ding on the audit, so to speak. if you have members that have failed to meet the educational component. And then I think the second part is simply just to try to encourage as much participation in meetings as possible. So the additions are that you have to have one educational component each year, and also if you're absent from 3 consecutive meetings, then it would immediately create a vacancy without action of the board.
Now, I would also like to say, at the last meeting, it was brought up that if there was a litigation against something that we did here, it'd be real easy for the other lawyer to say, well, they didn't have their training. You know, what
Which
they
is
know.
true. Which is true.
Well,
I mean,
anybody can sue anybody today. I mean, that's why you have a bunch of
Sure.
lawyers. I
Right.
mean, so, but is this required by the Heritage Council that we do this, or is this,
Your educational requirement
Yes.
is required.
Yes.
It's simply not in your bylaws.
what if you already have your PhD in historic buildings?
Doesn't matter.
It
Doesn't
wouldn't
matter.
matter.
You still have to have.
I'd
is it an
throw
hour?
that to you on the light notes. what I
Yeah,
did.
sure.
Yes, you have to have the training, and other boards and commissions require training too, or, you know, for different things. But this one is all tied to the Certified Local Government Agreement and requirements,
Which is tied to grants.
which is tied to grants and everything else. And we've had multiple years where we've had people attend 2 meetings a year, and we've had multiple years to where board members did not attend training for 2 or 3 years. So that has an impact on everything that we do.
And I don't want to sound bitter, but as somebody who gets the requirements in, if I can get my requirements in with everything I've got going on, anybody can. I firmly believe that. There's too many webinars, places to attend, opportunities here in the city for us to
It's
neglect.
not that hard to do.
I would have to agree, you know, if you want to be on this board and participate, then come to the meetings. No, that's the second item, but the first item is an hour of you've made it so easy with either online training or something down in the basement on Windows, or, I mean, we don't have to travel, you've brought it to us. So it's pretty dang easy to get, and it enhances our knowledge of what's going on. I personally am in favor of this. See no problem with it.
I move we approve the bylaw change.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second?
Question,
Yes, sir.
how many hours a year are we required to be educated in?
Just one.
1 hour? Would they necessarily be held here instead of travel? Or is
Some, we have some occasionally, but there's ones online, and there's other ones around the state that you can attend as far as those go, but it's really not hard to get those in. We probably have, 150 opportunities, either online or places like Bardstown, Covington, other ones that have training, so there's opportunities.
But you do have training sessions here, like we
If I
had.
can arrange them.
If we can arrange them,
Yeah,
but-
currently you all are all, I think maybe save one are in compliance for this year, so you're fine.
Okay,
And
so we're
then-
good for a year, is that
You're
what I hear?
good. And then we got the grant,
Okay.
and then we'll have training associated with that for the art programs, so I'll get that certified. So if you're asking me, John, they'll be here the next year.
Okay.
Now, after that, I can't, it just depends on money and availability, but, you know,
Gotcha.
I'll do my very best to get them to
Well, Mayor, if you want to put your PhD to work, you can go ahead and host a few of those educational meetings around here.
We just have to get you approved by the Heritage Council.
You can serve Arby's.
The press isn't here, so I'll just say this.
Oh, but remember, you're being recorded. You're being
Oh.
recorded.
No comment, no comment.
Okay, I have a motion, have a second. We've had discussion. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Motion passes. Very good, very good. Since this is a regular scheduled meeting, even though not on the agenda, is there anything else?
Yes, yes. Since we've got a city commissioner here and a city attorney here and staff here, I've noticed, and I'm sure other people up here have probably noticed off and on the same thing that I've noticed. A lot of times you see yard sale signs in historic districts that stay up all weekend. They're on telephone poles, they're in front of Center College at the President's House, they're on Maple Avenue, they're on Main Street. They seem to have a tendency to stay up from Friday to Monday. I don't know what the city's policy is on that. I know what it used to be on that. And I find it ironic that when we have somebody who owns a historic building want to make a change, you all are Johnny on the spot to make sure those issues are addressed. But however, it seems like anybody at will can put up a yard sign sale in the historic district. Is that okay? Is the city
I
change?
would like to take a moment to say, I believe it was our last
Well, wait.
AHB meeting, we had a huge discussion on signs, like back and forth and everything, and the P and Z got up and spoke, and really, we addressed this issue, and all of those came up.
I guess my question is it enforced? If it is enforceable, why isn't it enforced? I mean, why? It seems like we do one thing on one hand, but on the other hand, we do something differently. I mean, what's the difference there?
Well, yard sale signs are usually stuck in a yard. They're not usually being attached to
I
a
would have said
building or
that,
they're.
but these were
they're-
not. These were not in the yard. They were on telephone posts on Main Street.
Right, and those are not supposed to be there, but again, it's.
So what do you all do about it when?
It's a staff issue. They used to have the police go around and try to take some of those up. But it's one of those things to where they go up on Friday and they're down on Monday.
Is that acceptable?
It's not acceptable, but it's a staffing issue.
Do you have a policy to take care of that?
Well, again, anyone that's on duty can take those up if they're in violation,
Anyone?
like the police or codes or anyone, but code staff is not on duty on the weekend.
Well, but they don't. So I guess my question is, why don't they?
Well, it has to do with the priority of what the police are doing. I mean, it's more important to take care of others.
Is it difficult, Mr. City Attorney, to ask the city manager to request the police officers to be aware of that and to have those taken down?
I think you're certainly free to make that request, and the city manager can discuss that with chief of police and, again, as priorities.
What's the committee's position on that?
Committee's position is we discussed it last meeting, and if you review the video, you can see all sorts of things.
My question is, what's your position now on that?
I think that given the meth, heroin, domestic abuse issues, the people loitering, anything else, if the police happen to be outside their car and not doing anything else, then yes, they can rip off a sign. But if you ask me if I want my police focused on signage, I'm going to say no.
No, I'm not suggesting police. I'm just suggesting there's got to be a policy in place. I mean, how can you ask a property owner to do one thing and then turn around and let an individual do something that's not in compliance?
I think they're telling you, John, there's a policy in place. It's enforcement of the policy is the issue.
I mean, we have it happen all over Danville. I mean, if you look out on the bypass on the weekend, they're in violation of the planning and zoning ordinance all over the place. There's signs stuck everywhere because they know, they can get away with it for a couple days here or there. And yes, we have policies in place, but it's a staffing issue. It's having enough staff to be on duty on weekends as well to go around and take up these. But I mean, in your own neighborhood, you'll see yard sale signs all over the place, and some of those are allowed, some of them aren't. They're all over utility poles. They're not supposed to be there. But it's having enough staff in the city to be able to do that.
If we can change the subject regarding, this is also regarding signs, our ordinances do not allow paper signs in windows, and yet for months, the space that used to be Main Street Furniture has paper signs all over the place. Shouldn't that be removed at some point?
I just met with those guys this week. I thought all the interior paper that they've got up on those windows are down.
It was down yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was
it's
down
down.
yesterday.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's down. Now,
All right.
there's some other little signs that are stuck up there that says, I think Love built this place. But I'm not sure that qualifies as a sign.
I can't verify they're all down, but the majority were down. I walked past.
Yeah, all of that
yesterday.
paper's down. I met with them the other day. Oh, I noticed, yeah.
Yeah, she's been noticing for,
Yeah, so it's down, that's down, I can tell you that, and they're working on that building. I met with him the other day, so that is down.
Who owns that building?
Can I ask just one more question, back to the yard signs?
it's a church thing.
Commissioner Sears is here. Could you take that to the city manager and see if you all can't come up with a plan to,
I could do that, Mr. Bowling, but it's been stated, we do have an ordinance, and we've discussed it, so it comes down to staffing, but I'll certainly pass it on to him. Yeah, I'm glad to talk to him, that's the answer, yes.
I rest my case.
Very good.
Do you want to talk about the noise?
Yep, Dana, with the, I think you had brought or put out an email on the subject of the noise.
Yes, I sent it to our staff and to our members here. Concern that I noticed that during the Thursday night concert, sponsored by PNC and I think headed up by Heart of Danville, that the entire time the foundation of my house was vibrating and the windows were rattling. And I just thought, this can't be good. So I decided to look on the internet, and while I only found one reference to it, in London, a scientist has investigated and is saying, although, you know, these concerts are good and help raise money to preserve our buildings, the sound level is damaging brickwork and windows. And so you can't really prove that until after the damage would have occurred. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't set a level for noise, because it's not really necessary to have it at the level of damage. People can enjoy music that isn't deafening.
So I received your email, and I tried to email everybody back this morning, but the internet went down at the library. I did find several references and noise, and it breaks down to ambient, which is what we hear every day, and then special events. And usually it is done in regards to noise levels. It was addressed in regards to construction, like New York City's building a new subway. How is this construction noise going to affect the people, neighborhood, all of that? What seems to be is that if it is acceptable for human hearing, it's acceptable for a stable building.
But it's really not acceptable for human hearing,
Well,
according
so,
to
and then
medicine.
that brings the next point. So it really, so as an Architectural Heritage Board, it really doesn't apply to us, and we do have a noise ordinance, so I would honestly kick it to them and say.
Well, I'm just saying, in the historic district, if this is damaging Mr. Bowling's building across the street and the courthouse next to it, a little bit at a time, and it would not impede anybody's enjoyment of the music if we just might ask the Heart of Danville to have their sound engineers lower the sound just a bit.
I am saying that you have one study out of London, a very large city with a very different construction than us, and to say that it applies to our town is not acceptable.
This was music. This was not about
Again,
construction.
very different building area, everything, construction. But when it comes to humans, that can be addressed at the city level. We would never be able to say off of one study. And I did a lot of work. And again, everything was related to construction, large cities, and excessive noise in that manner, and not just music.
Isn't there a noise, don't we have a noise ordinance?
There is a noise ordinance in place, but for special events, we give waivers for those, you know, for things such as shooting fireworks off at the football games, or, you know, the Heart of Danville, what are y'all doing, twice a month?
Yeah.
They do 2 times a month, and it's, how many hours, I forgot.
3.5.
It's 3.5 hours, but we would give waivers for those, you know, for those special events. So yes, there is a noise ordinance that lists decibels and sound and stuff, but to enhance things downtown for these events, then we would allow them to do that.
Who controls
I'm
the
not
levels?
anti-music, just if we lowered the volume a tad.
I suspect that somebody gets excited because the bass and
Yeah.
jams the bass up, and that's what
Yeah.
vibrates,
It's
is the
the-
bass. And so I have the very same bands sitting right in the middle of Lexington and Main Street play, and they don't vibrate anywhere. And I have a feeling it's bouncing off the back of the courthouse there, and that's what's causing the,
Yeah,
because I
well,
had
my
those very
house-
same bands play, and they don't vibrate. Not that Harrisburg's buildings are much different than Danville's, so I have a feeling it's the fact that it's backed up against the courthouse, and it's just bouncing the sound back and forth, I suspect.
I wear earplugs when I go to the concert, and I can hear it really
Yeah.
well.
And to be
Is there-
honest with
is
you
there-
all, we would, for this to be germane to us, we would need a structural engineer's report of some sort that did a study. I mean, because we can't base what research off the internet on what's actually happened to
Sure.
the buildings here. So, who knows, unless you have some kind of structural engineering report that really gets into the nuts and bolts of the building. I couldn't tell you that it's
If
hurting the
it's,
buildings
if
or
it's,
not.
if it's condoned by the city, is there potential liability from a property owner?
How would you
I would
prove it?
find it very hard pressed to make that nexus
prove
or
it.
to create that causation that just in fact the act of an individual because something was deemed acceptable in society was the fault of the city. So I think that would, while crazy arguments are made every day, that would take the pie in my mind.
I just asked a question.
My answer,
I'm not suggesting.
anything's possible under the law, but I think the potential there is minute.
I'm not suggesting anything litigious or an ordinance or anything else, just a friendly request to the heart of Danville to maybe lower the sound a bit. That's my request. And I don't know that anybody else agrees with me, but I'm
Well, it
just
sounds like, ma'am,
asking.
you can make that request as a citizen yourself, but it doesn't sound like the board is prepared to take
Right,
any action.
apparently not, but it's my request as a citizen whose building is getting vibrated off the foundation.
I concur with Dana. I'll sign the letter.
Noise is an issue that comes before the city commission at various times, as do all issues, but it's one that tends to be addressed in a cyclical manner, and it's one that, frankly, there haven't been a lot of changes in decibels, or quite frankly, it's hard to manage. And at one time, the police department had these devices that they could measure sound decibels. But then, again, it also, for special events, things like brass band, for instance, would even violate the ordinance as written without the special permit waiver. And so it gets down to preference more than it gets down to danger to human ears and, I would say, structural integrity. I think it goes to how you appreciate music individually as opposed to some type of disturbance of your
I know
own
we
enjoyment.
can't make stock recommendations either, but I would say that to invest in hearing aids would be a good thing.
Apparently, there's an app that you can put on your iPhone that will measure sound decibels, so there we go.
But, music is really
knew?
hard. Like you said, the bass is loud, but then another, other tones, you can't hear it. So the sound engineer is trying to balance that for everyone to be able to
pretty certain
hear
that's what
the
it is.
music coming out. So it's not a simple problem in any setting, whether it's outdoors or indoors.
If we come up with a solution, I want a recommendation, because a lot of the cars coming through the ATM at Chase Bank with the bass turned down are rattling the windows in my office building. It
Yes.
just- You're just going, I'm not sure what it's doing to the occupant of the car, but it's pretty loud across the street.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you all. I'd like to recognize City Commissioner Series, Mr. Hunter, Heart of Danville. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your support. Staff, thank you all. It is.
I love our city attorney here.
I'm happy.